Let's talk about the Canada stuff first. I think everyone generally is like, this is crazy, but there's a couple of different pieces to unpack. The first being, I think that there's nuance around the protests themselves of like, I always think of like, if I was trying to live in a city and a bunch of people came and just parked their cars and like literally it was a gridlock and you couldn't go anywhere, that'd be annoying for the local residents. Now, there may be a good reason for doing it or not a good reason, but like, I do think that there's an element of like the people there are like, hey, this sucks, but that's not what's going on anymore. Like that was like for like a day or two. And then it seems like they got cleared out pretty quickly. And then it just became like what a normal protest would be, right? Where people were like voicing their opinion, but the government like kept pressing. And that to me seems like where people are like, okay, that's crazy. Is that kind of your read on it as well?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's very heavy. It's an ongoing situation. And I've spoken with a couple Canadian friends. One actually DM'd me the other day and they said, they were talking, they're living in New York now, but they were talking to some of their friends that live in Ottawa. And they said that their life didn't really seem all that different a few weeks ago when the truckers were there. Yeah, the honking was a bit annoying, but the government said stop honking, you would get fined, and a lot of people stopped honking.
Yeah,
and then after
it's funny how that works.
It was fine. They said, like, funnily enough, like as soon as they started cracking down, the police did. That's when they actually noticed that there was a disruption in the city. It was like when the police started doing blockades on the road. And I just think with the whole situation and the reaction to it, I'm somebody who just likes logical consistency and consistency with particular situations. When you compare the reaction by these governments to what happened in the summer of 2020 in reaction to George Floyd and that whole situation to what's going on now, I just don't think there's a lot of consistency across the reactions. There was a lot of damage and destruction in the summer of 2020, and we can have the debate if that's a viable form of protest or not. And then this one up in Ottawa seems very peaceful. You literally have kid bouncy houses like in the middle of the city, and that's their form of protest. And it doesn't seem like the reaction is really because of a disruption of everyday life in Ottawa, but the fact that they really don't like what these particular group of people are actually protesting, which is civil liberties.
Yeah. One of the things that I'll never forget watching, because I don't really watch like the news, right? Like in terms of like the live news. But during, I think it was the summer of 2020, remember when the protesters, I'm going to use that as a terminology of I don't know what caused, what side of the debate, whatever, but there was a group of citizens that basically set the police department on fire in like Minneapolis or something. Mm-hmm. And like they like got into the police. And I remember watching that as it was developing, just being like, holy, like this is like another level, right? It's like, okay, protest, got it. Okay, even like the violence or property destruction, like in New York City, there was, multiple situations where they were breaking glass or whatever. Like, again, you get drunk people who knows if they're part of the protest. Whatever. Like when you get to the point where you're literally setting the police department on fire, like that was like, okay, we've breached into a level of this that like is not going to be well received by most people. Right.
And again, it goes back to like the inconsistency. Like there's that famous meme of the CNN reporter is like literally in a gas mask and there's a city on fire behind him. And he's like the tagline on CNN is mostly peaceful protest. The media apparatus, the political apparatus back then was vehemently with the protesters in that situation. And they were fighting for civil liberties too. A lot of them, I believe, at least thought they were. And then here, again, in Canada, it's mostly peaceful. And it's people need to get trampled with horses and put in place. Like in Philly, where I'm from, they were ghost riding cop cars down Broad Street. And they were blowing up ATMs and like taking stuff. And there was nowhere near the reaction that the protesters in Canada are going through right now. But again, two different countries. So
there's also this part of like I think the police and I want to be as thoughtful as I can about how to present this idea. I have a theory, which is when the people who are protesting have like signs, they're honking, but they're generally willing to adhere to the rule of law, the cops actually are emboldened and they can have like a very, very iron-fisted response. And they know these people will basically comply at some point, right? But what we've seen in France, in the United States, in many other places around the world, is that when the dissent is much more formidable, much more violent, etc. Actually, a lot of times what happens is the police basically they walk away, right? Yeah. They back up, and like it's almost like when two strong forces meet, the police are the ones who back away and they don't become combative, usually because they're outnumbered or whatever. And so it's like very interesting dynamic of like the more peaceful you are, actually in some way it elicits a stronger response from the police versus if you're, setting the city on fire, the cops seem to be a little, less excited about going outside. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the violence begets violence type of mentality. Like if you're going to meet that violence that was happening in 2020 with police violence, it could have certainly just poured fuel on that whole fire. I think, again, with what's going on in Canada right now, specifically, what we should really hone in on is that people are fighting for their right to actually be able to live within an economy, to go to work, to
it's crazy,
make a living, put a home over their families, and actually feed their families. And the fact that it's gotten to this point where you have Justin Trudeau and their government enacting the Emergencies Act to freeze people's bank accounts and put people on list if they were supporting the truckers in any ways. It's pretty frankly scary. And what's even scarier is that there's not politicians from the United States or other quote unquote Western free democracies standing up and saying, "Hey, Justin, why don't you chill out a bit? You're
Have we seen anyone other than the El Salvador president? I think he had some tweets about basically just being like, hey, if I was doing this, you guys would be like invading my country, right? But other than that, I don't think we've seen anyone really step up.
And I think that's, the silence is deafening, and I would consider it somewhat of an endorsement of what's going on up there, because let's be real, they want to do this stuff in the United States too. I mean, it's pretty clear that they want to usher us into the central bank digital currency world. The Fed's talked about it. ECB's talked about it. They want to do it up in Canada, the UK as well. And I mean, I think Majid, who was just on Rogan, like this, listening to that on the way down, I think the way he described it was extremely cogent. Like it's the vaccine passports, which is what's being protested in Canada, are the Trojan horse. You get people showing QR codes at a restaurant just to go eat, and it starts there. But then it's, you actually can't eat this burger because it's deemed too fatty. You got to eat this soy burger instead. And that apparatus, that QR code app, is sort of the Trojan horse that leads to that control over people's lives and economic freedom.
Hey you, did you like this video? Great, we make 5 of them a day and post them here on this channel. Make sure you subscribe, like the video, and see you next time.